Score North and scorenorth.com.
And welcome in. A very exciting day here. Zolgad, Chip Scoggins, Declan Goff, Purple Acces. Chip, of course, a outstanding sports columnist for the Star Tribune, my longtime friend, my longtime partner in crime on the Vikings beat back in the day. And Chip, as I told Dex earlier today on Mackey and Judd, there are benchmarks in training camp, okay? Because training camp always turns to this sort of like monotonous, like 2 weeks in, you're ready to see a game, right?
Yeah.
But one of the most exciting things, and this is total geek, but I'm fine with it. One of the most exciting things before game one in the exhibition season was the release of the first depth chart. Because, like, you always sort of knew, but the team would never confirm. Like, if you just flat out ask, well, who's the backup one? They'd be like, we don't have to have a depth chart out yet. What are you talking about? Yeah. So, depth chart one is out, and I want to talk to you about potential surprises, about your thoughts, since we both watched a bunch of practice. And I want to start here, Chipper. Mm-hmm. Quarterback. The quarterback position, no surprise, Kirk Cousins is your first team QB. But the backup quarterback says it's very crafty. Kellen Mond or Sean Mannion, as if to say Mannion's not 3 because we put the or there, despite the fact that there would be no justification based on his name being M.A. and Mond being M.O. for Mond to be in front of Mannion, unless you considered him to be Mond, the backup. Your thoughts, though, on technically trying to say that the Vikings have 2 backup QBs, because in my opinion, if you're saying, well, we've got 2, the old saying is, you got 0.
I love that you went deep dive in it and looked at the alphabetical. That was
yeah.
That's a veteran move there.
Mannion should be before Mond if you really consider them equals.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that's not a very promising development for young Kellen Mond. And maybe it's not surprising because they haven't seen him in a game action yet, or a preseason game action yet. So, but it's been a very, I would say, difficult start to camp for him with the fumble situation. You want him to win that number 2 job, right? If you're the team.
Yes.
Otherwise, what are you doing? I mean, you're gonna have to probably move on because if you can't beat out Sean Mannion to be the backup, then what does that say about your prospects with the team? So I guess I'm not surprised it's an or, and I think we will not get that clarity until after at least 1, maybe 2 preseason games where you see how he performs in those situations.
So you saw a bunch of the practice Monday night. I did too. Yeah. And look, it's not a scrimmage, okay? Yeah. It's just a practice. It's not a scrimmage, but it's a bunch of team drills. Yeah. All right, Mond can throw. I'm not saying he can't throw.
Yeah.
Like, he has some attributes. So I'm not saying that he's a complete that it's a complete dumpster fire when it comes to Kellen Mond. But again, in watching him drop a snap, and he flat out dropped a snap. Jesse Davis got the ball back to him, and he dropped it again. And now, if this is the first time, okay, but this is about the 4th time. In watching him, and he and Cousins were the only 2 quarterbacks allowed to run the drill at the end of practice with a minute left. Mannion did not. And Kellen Mond, at one point, I think, took a sack. Like, it was a complete dumpster fire. I just don't see, if you're the Vikings, how you're not trying to make some type of backup plan right now at quarterback. So if Cousins gets hurt, there's some type of bailout plan that doesn't feel like a complete disaster.
Do you think that they're, and I think it's a mistake if this is what they're doing, but do you think that they're thinking, okay, we know what we have with Sean Mannion, right?
Yeah.
We can go into the season with him, number 2. Let's let Mond play 3/4 of the preseason games to see at the end of this, do we trust him? And if not, Mannion's the guy.
I mean, they might be. It feels like you might be right. Here's the problem. Mannion can't play.
I mean, I'm not saying, I don't agree with the premise, but I wonder.
I know.
I think Mond has to play 3/4 of the preseason, right?
Oh, I agree. But Chipper, in watching his decision making,
Yeah,
like he is consistently going to be sacked.
that and the fumbles are troubling.
Oh,
There's been a number of these, and I don't know.
You're right.
I don't know what that is. I didn't know enough about him coming out of college. Was it a problem in college?
Yep.
But even O'Connell has acknowledged it here, right? Didn't he address it earlier? Was it last week where he talked about putting the balls on the ground and how many they've had, which kind of frustrated him. So I don't know. But you're right. The decision making and I mean, I will say this, Judd, in fairness, and then, this is not to excuse him or say, use the excuse, but you're talking about you've been in the league 2 years and now you've had 2 offensive systems that are completely different. I mean, that's got to be difficult, right, mate? Is that part of the process, of trying to learn this and process it? You're learning a brand new system after being in one your rookie year and trying to learn that. Now you're doing something.
No question about it.
Could that be contributing to the decision making? I don't know.
I think it definitely could be, but my problem is he looks completely lost.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like like Sean Mannion has been in systems like this, and you can tell he knows what he is supposed to do. He just can't do it. Like, this is not a mental problem with Sean. This is a physical thing. With Kellen, if Kellen just looked like he was sort of learning and it was going a little bit slow, Kirk is 1000% not operating at full efficiency, and I'm not surprised by that because it's not new, but it's a lot of new things.
It's different.
But if you watch Mond, so I charted the last series that Mond played Monday, okay, which was 2-0 versus 2D. And the offense got the ball at its own 25 with 1:30 left in the game. All right, so you got to go. Like you got to get down. He threw a short pass complete. Then he tried a deep pass that was broken up by Chris Boyd. Then he tried another pass that was broken up by the defense. There was a penalty on the defense, so that's a break. The next pass for Amir Smith-Marset, Chipper, catchable ball, out of bounds. The next down, he holds on to the ball so long, he's sacked at his own 37 with about 27 seconds left. That can't happen.
Yeah.
He then got a fairly substantial completion to the defense's 48-yard line before getting a short completion, a spike, incomplete pass. It literally went nowhere.
Yeah.
And I just don't see how you can watch that and operate with it's going, if Kirk does not get hurt, you're fine. I just think that's a really risky assumption just because Kirk hasn't gotten hurt that he's going, because like if you have to plug this kid in, I think you're toast.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I think they're going to get to the end of this and say, do you trust him? No, then you're going Mannion. And again, I don't know that if it's to finish out a game, okay. If it's to play one game, maybe. If it's a stretch of games, you're in big trouble, right? Yeah. And so I don't know. I think you always have to account for it being a stretch of games versus just finish out a game. And so, I don't know. I mean, some fans might say, "Well, it's you're worrying about the backup quarterback," but I think you have to because of the way this team is built. That you don't want the wheels to fall off. If Kirk has to leave, because you have a team that's, I think is going to be right there in the playoff mix. I really think this could be a playoff team, and that they're going to at least be in the mix for it. And so this is not a situation where you're in the predicament. Well, let's just punt on this season if the quarterback gets hurt. I mean, I don't think you want to do that.
Right. Now, if Kirk was gone, then perhaps you do. But yeah, when you don't...
I don't think you can, though.
No. If Kirk had left, no. If they had let Kirk go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If they had let Kirk go, if they had decided we're going to hit a reset here, then I think it's fine. The other problem I have with... because I've traditionally thought the exact same way, which is, well, if it's one game, can you get by? Until last year, I never thought about, but what if that one game is a key game against the Packers at Lambeau Field?
Yeah.
Because, that was not, that was just one game, and you know what? That was not fine.
Yeah, so, you're right. I mean, ideally, you want to have a credible alternative, credible plan B, and they don't have that right now. They just don't have it, and that's. I mean, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, Judd. I don't know with their salary cap situation and who's available and all that. Can you get a credible plan B right now?
Can you get somebody that can at least step in and run this thing efficiently is my question. Like, that's credibility to me.
That's the thing. How much is that going to cost you, Judd? Even a good backup quarterback probably makes more than they can afford with their salary cap situation, right?
No, I think they've got some room now, but the problem there is, are you going to make a trade? Because then we're talking a draft pick. Yeah. I am so underwhelmed, Chip, by what I've seen.
Yeah.
That I don't see how it's workable. I don't see how Kevin O'Connell, a quarterback himself, who struggled, but a quarterback himself, I don't see how he comfortably can watch this film of practice and say, yeah, we'll get Kellen there. And Sean's just not, Sean is Sean. God bless him. Yeah. But, you're not going to change him. Mind you're banking on that you can change, and I just don't know if I see enough firing away there where you're going to change him quickly enough where if Kirk goes down in week 3, it's like, okay, he can play.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but I also think you need game evidence more than practice too. Practice, sure. Not to say you discount it, but I think you want to see how all this stuff that you're putting in and all that, how it looks when you get into a game situation. So, it's going to be vital for Mond. More than I think anybody on this team, right? Those preseason games.
Oh, it's going to be huge. And I would play him a ton. I agree with you completely. Yeah. Play him a ton. I don't need to see Sean.
And it'll be interesting to see. Play, but... You think they'll play Kirk?
I tried to ask O'Connell about. Yeah. I tried to ask that question last week and got the runaround.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't play Stafford.
Yes, and that's he was new to the system. Yep. I could see it both ways, honestly. I could see Kirk really campaigning to try to get at least one series. You could say, well, what's that going to accomplish? But it does give you a little bit different tempo and pace than you get in practice.
Yeah.
So I could see it both ways. I don't know how they'll go, but even if it's one series, okay, fine. I think Mond has to play a ton, and then you have to just see what he does, and then that tells you what your next move is.
I'm not sure about you. I've become much more torn on exhibition games in playing because, no team worth its salt now runs anything that's not just a vanilla package, right?
Yeah.
So does Kirk. So if Kirk plays 4 plays, 8 plays with the first team, does it help him that much? Because they're not going to be implementing the system. They're going to run base stuff as possible. So it's not like, hey, we just ran 8 plays of the new packages and that's great. So I'm much more torn there now than I used to be.
Well, I don't know that you gain anything from it other than you see real game tempo, or it's obviously going to be faster, right? But more than what you're seeing here, and so maybe you just to get a little glimpse of that before before the season starts. I don't know, but you're not running anything extravagant out of your thing. The defense isn't going to throw any crazy looks at you. So for a quarterback, do you gain much? I think nothing more. Tempo, defense. I think it helps to tackle, to work on that and get, kind of get that feel again. It's interesting. Did you watch Hard Knocks last night?
I have not seen the first one yet. Good.
It's interesting the approach that Campbell takes versus it is night and day. The Lions training camp, like the first image they show is these guys full pads tackling. Tackling to the ground. And he said, there's a thing. He said something like, he gathered the team up. He said something like, I'm not a lunatic. I'm not crazy. I'm telling you. He said he has evidence that working on tackling helps. I want to make sure I phrase it right, but working on tackling in camp helps prevent injuries later on because I don't know if you get used to it, something, I don't know. But he thinks it helps their conditioning. And they're tackling, Judd. This is full out, slamming guys to the ground.
It's old school Ticey.
It's old school. Yeah, that's what I say. It's Mike Tice. And so But if you're not used to that in camp, like the tackling play, I think you can probably get some benefit out of that.
Right. I guess the question is this: do you want to risk injury?
Well, that's the other thing
to get into the season, and these guys look like they clearly don't. That's why I don't think they're going to play Kirk probably or guys that are starters too much, or if at all, because I don't think they're going to be. We've seen nothing so far that indicates they have any interest in risking injury.
And that's the thing. I mean, we've already seen some season-ending injuries around the league.
Yeah,
and that you can do that in non-contact. I mean, we saw it with Teddy.
Yep.
I mean, it happens in the sport, but I think this staff is going to do everything to minimize the possibility of injuries happening. And I sort of side on that too, because you know what happens inevitably. Someone gets hurt. We're like, well, these games are meaningless. What are you doing this for?
Yeah.
You dramatically altered your season when you didn't need to. So,
Yep.
So I would probably say no. I just don't think you get enough out of it to warrant the risk.
I have no interest in seeing number 18 on the field in a game until September 11th or 4. Yep. And if they're not going to play, then I don't care about Kirk playing because technically Kirk and Jefferson should be trying to get on the same page. But I can't do it anymore. Like, because you're right. An Achilles pops, a knee goes. It doesn't take much, and then you're screwed.
Yeah. It just feels different if it happens in week 3 versus the first preseason,
right?
Like a preseason. And I wouldn't play Daniel Hunter, Zarius Smith, Harrison Smith. Nope. I wouldn't play any of the top frontline guys that are really pivotal to Eric Hendricks. I mean, I just don't know what you get if the benefit is enough to warrant the risk.
This is going to sound incredibly harsh, but I would sit down with the roster and say, remove the human element to the conversation.
Yeah.
Who would I go home and cry if they got hurt? And who would I be like, I can replace him? It's a terrible thing to say, but I mean, that's how I would,
You know what? That's probably how they look at it, though.
I mean, there are certain guys who are probably who are I wouldn't call them vitally important, but would be considered, semi-important, who you could replace.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, let's be honest, these things are meant for evaluating to find out who's going to be roster spot 35 to 53.
Yes.
More than
which is important.
Yeah, which is because heck, we've seen it the last couple of years when this team didn't have the depth that it needed, and it had to rely on all those guys that came off the practice squad or were at the bottom of the roster. And so I used to chuckle at that, but it's legitimate. I mean, you need to make good decisions on those because you're going to need them. I mean, no team's going to avoid injuries.
Yep, and special teams too.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I got a question for you about a story. Like, I feel like we're talking about this, so I don't want to imply it's being buried, but I also think that there's storylines that have overtaken it. Mm-hmm. And I think the excitement of Vikings fans should be absolutely huge. They have to stay healthy. But the Zadarius Smith, Danielle Hunter combination and what they're bringing and what they're going to do and how they're going to be used, I think should have a real, like if we were to take storylines right now and be like storyline 1, storyline 2, storyline 3, I think it's a top 3 potential storyline of why this defense could be vastly improved, and also what these two, if healthy, can bring from just a nightmare for the opposing quarterback and offensive line standpoint.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to Danielle talk the other night before the fan night. Was that Monday? Think about how much more of a veteran presence he projects now. He's always been kind of quiet, Yep. I mean, when you talk to him and interview him, he was good, but he was more quiet. You can tell he's a guy who's comfortable with his role in the organization and his leadership on that defense. He's just a very thoughtful, I think we're seeing more of his personality now than we saw before. But yeah, if they stay healthy, Judd, I think they're primed for a big year, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just think that combination, you can tell that Danielle even said, man, having Zadarius here, he's taught me some things I didn't know, like some tricks or moves or whatever. And then I think Mike Smith, the hire
Yeah.
that they got from Green Bay, who's worked with Za'Darius a long time, sounds like he's kind of a pass rushing guru. That I think his title is pass rush specialist or something. He's outside linebackers coach, but I think guys really gain something from his knowledge and like tricks to pick up. But it was interesting. I think it was you that asked Daniil about going against guards and centers, and he said we look at that as a not mismatch. What was the word he used? Disadvantage for the offense. Like when he
Very politically correct.
Yeah, he said when I go against the guard or center, we think that's a disadvantage for them, which it is. It's just speaking truth. I mean, if you put him over weaker, pass blockers, it's going to be a disadvantage. So, I think they're going to have a big year as long as they stay healthy, and I think it's going to have, a huge impact on the rest of that defense because it just makes everybody better when your pass rush is claustrophobic,
and especially with those two. And the thing I like is Za'Darius, who is an outgoing guy, like he is fun.
Yeah.
You can tell, and it's a small thing, but it's important. You could tell he has had a very positive influence on loosening Hunter up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so, like, it's far more fun. And Chip, it helps in sports when it's very clear that a team or certain guys are tight, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the last time that I've seen two Vikings players who are like this tight. Like they're always together. They're very different people, but that's
Pat
good.
And Kevin, maybe. Pat and
Kevin, Pat and Kevin. I go back to Hank Thomas and John Randall.
Yeah,
Randall and Ed McDaniel. Like those guys were all thick as
Burke
thieves.
A lot of
yeah. But I mean, I think that is especially at jobs like that where there's a certain amount of pressure. I think it's great that Za'Darius clearly is keeping Hunter loose.
Yeah.
And it's fun because I will say this. There's no question about this one. For Daniil Hunter, the last 2 years have been probably brutal.
Yeah, miserable, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're rehabbing, you can't play. That's no fun. Yeah, and I think the personality's been good for Daniil, but also I think that's a good signing if he stays healthy and productive because he's done this his whole career at Za'Darius. I mean, this is what he does. And Daniil, this is something new. I mean, yes, he was a stand-up. He told us, reminded us he was a stand-up in his first year, second year. But this is still something different than what he's been doing. So I think it's helpful to have Za'Darius to kind of teach him some things too. And then vice versa, So, I mean, I think and just the 3-4 look, I mean, it just seems like it's has the potential to give them options to be creative.
Yes, and it's going to be 3-4. It's going to be 4-3. I think it's going to be incredibly like we are going to see a ton of looks too, which I love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but because I'm still convinced that there's a package with the first team.
Yeah,
that's going to involve Cine that we have not witnessed yet in practice, and I don't think they're going to show it.
Yeah, because I mean,
there's no advantage to showing it.
Yeah, Connell even said the other day, is like, we haven't shown our best or whatever, these new looks. So there's no doubt behind the scenes in their walkthrough or meetings, they're installing stuff that we haven't seen and they're not going to show in camp, So yeah, I think I think Donatel and Mike Pettin, they have a good just track record of trying different things. And so, so I'm we talk so much about the offense and changes and Justin Jefferson, but if this team's going to make that leap and be a playoff team, it's got to be because the defense gets a lot better than what it was last year. And I think it will. Just having Daniil back and Za'Darius Smith, I think that improves them automatically. But I think the scheme has the potential to really fit the personnel that they have.
Yes, exactly right. So what else stood out to you from official or unofficial depth chart number one?
There's no real surprises here.
There aren't.
I mean, Dantzler's ahead of Booth. I assume that stays that way, right? We'll see what happens in the games. If Booth flashes and Dantzler struggles, maybe that changes. But no real surprises. That I can see. Do you? I mean, I don't think.
No surprises. I think Patrick Jones being the second guy behind Hunter at outside linebacker on that side is intriguing. I think they really like him. I would not be surprised if he emerges as a very solid contributor. Because he can definitely,
him and Wandham are pretty good backups, Judd. I mean,
I agree.
I think Wandham can be productive, and he probably fits what they're looking for at that position. So I mean, those two, Jones and Wandham, that's not a bad guys to bring off the bench, so to speak.
Barring injury, Chip, the one thing that I would not be surprised. So I think most of the first team stuff is spot on, and the plan on that depth chart is for those guys to be starting against the Packers September 11th. The one that wouldn't surprise me, and I told Dex this as well, I would not be completely shocked if Ed Ingram is the starting right guard on opening day and Davis is not, because, I mean, one, he's a second-round pick. Correct. Two, he looks the part, and there's no question. I mean, he is their guy. And I think it's a second-round pick. There's no like, oh, he can't start yet. If he impresses, I wouldn't be surprised if he jumps up the depth chart.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm guessing this thing is going to change after they get through these preseason games. I'd keep an eye on him and Booth, obviously. And then I don't know if Cine will overtake Bynum right away for the opener, but, obviously he's your first-round pick, and they're high on him. So, I mean, those three rookies, could they all start, week one? I don't think it's out of the question, because we've seen flashes from them, obviously, in training camp so far. So, I mean, I think they're all going to play,
right?
Particularly Booth and Cine, because the different packages they have. But I wouldn't be surprised if all three of them found their way into the starting lineup by week one.
Yeah, wide receiver wise, here's my depth chart. Okay,
yeah,
Jefferson, Thielen, Osborne. I think their fourth guy, Smith-Marsette, and I think he's going to return punts.
Yeah. I mean, Osborne's definitely number 3, and I think Smith-Marsette's probably 4. And then he's your punt returner, right?
Yes.
And then Naylor and BC Johnson. How many wide receivers do you keep?
That's the question, and we don't really know.
5 or 6, I don't know.
Yep.
It all depends on. Get to the end to see what your injuries are. How the special teams go. But to me, I agree. I think Smith-Marsette's number 4 right now.
Do you think that on BC, who I like, and I think he runs good routes, and I think he's a solid, reliable player. If they were to try and sneak Naylor through waivers in the final cut, can they get him to the practice squad, or does he get claimed? Because my guess with him is I don't think he's a guy you want to lose. Like there's some real upside there that we've seen.
He might get claimed by if a team get some injuries at wide receiver in preseason, and you're looking around, you may not be able to sneak him through, and that's sometimes those factor in your own cuts. Like, okay, he's going to get claimed if we try that. So, they obviously drafted him. They like him, and so that's in his favor right now. But I agree with you. I want to see what BC does in preseason and coming back, and because I thought he had a pretty nice trajectory going.
Yep.
As a complimentary wide receiver. So these are the kind of fascinating storylines to watch. I know preseason games we kind of roll our eyes at, but in terms of depth and guys on the bubble or making the team, I mean, it's very important for those guys, and clearly the most important is for Mond, I think.
Last thing, let's pay ode to what I think is an underrated bust. Wyatt Davis.
I know. It's funny. I was sitting here looking at him on his depth chart. I mean,
Chip, he's a 3rd-round pick. He is a Spielman 3rd-round pick. This is not we whiffed on a 6th-round guard. Too bad. See you later. Yeah. He's not going to make this team. I won't be surprised if he's not on the practice squad. This is an underrated, massive swing, a Sano-like swing and a miss.
Yeah, I mean, he's behind Ingram. He's 3rd on the depth chart. And
he's done.
How, again, this was not a 7th-round pick. This was a 3rd-round pick out of Ohio State. And, this is 2 regimes now. This is 2 different coaching staffs that have clearly felt the same way about him. So I don't know. We can't brush this off as he came into camp heavy last year. That we fell for that one. Last year. Yeah, it's just a miss, I guess.
But a third round miss this quickly?
Yeah.
That's a hell of a miss, man.
I know. So I would love to know, like, what, why he went that high to them if he can't even break third team in the second year. He's third on depth chart after 2 weeks in his second year.
Yep.
Passed by a rookie already.
Yeah, who they drafted in the second round the next year. So clearly they saw
it, yeah.
enough practice film to know that it wouldn't work. I did hear that Rick was told by some, don't take him, and he took him. But I mean, again, a third round miss is in this league now, a guy that can't contribute. Like that's not a whoops. That's why you got fired miss.
And if you decide that Mond can't play either.
Yeah.
He was a third rounder, right?
And well, you know what? And this gets to a very interesting point. You're right. Mond, Wyatt Davis, and I believe fifth round pick Chaz Surratt, who was a quarterback in college, got moved to linebacker and was supposed to come here. And he's so athletic. I think he's a goner too.
Yeah.
Now that's a little bit later in the draft, but I mean that's still a guy who you claimed we got all these picks because we can develop guys, right?
But you can't miss them that high. You can't miss second round. You can't miss on third rounders because, it's just those are guys you're counting on to contribute. Maybe not, if they're not starters, then valuable backups.
Yes.
And, and if you're having to cut these guys a year after you draft them, that's a problem because that's where your depth comes in. That's where this is where it becomes a problem. You've missed on high draft picks. So yeah, I mean it's that one did jump out. The Wyatt Davis one did jump out to me too when I looked at it.
Exactly. All right, sir. We will talk to you next week for more Purple Acces. Thanks, Chipper.
All right, brother.
Talk to you.